Carney is the new Prime Minister of Canada. Carney is someone who's come up on the podcast before. We've talked about other work he's been engaged in. He's a former public servant, former leader of central banks in Canada and Britain. I don't know, actually, Adam, whether you know him personally. I forget if that's come up or just someone you're just familiar with.
No, I've met him. I've met him a couple of times at Davos. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So someone again who's come up on the podcast, and I'm curious what sort of leader you think he'll be based on his background. And could you tell us a bit more about his background?
I mean, he's a tough nut. Like I've done a lot of chairing in my life, and Mark Carney is a handful. Not because he's in any way uncooperative or unprofessional on stage, or takes excessive amounts of time or anything like that, but just because he is a force and he gets his own way and he doesn't tolerate. I mean, I think he decided I was just completely incompetent, which again doesn't happen to me all that often. It was quite something, yeah. So
what were you talking about? What was?
It was just chairing like this extraordinarily distinguished panel of central bankers, and I think he felt I wasn't like entirely, up to speed. There was Kuroda-san of the Bank of Japan was on the same panel, and it was high level stuff. So I got a little bit of coaching from Carney. So yeah, I don't envy his staff, to be honest. But he's we're close contemporaries. He's a kind of classic product of Anglo-American, Anglo-Canadian American, elite economics, business formation. He was studied at Harvard in the late 80s. He did a PhD in economics in Oxford. He then did a stint at Goldman Sachs in their offices all over the world: London, Tokyo, New York, Toronto. He's ambitious. This is one thing that's very clear, along with the competence and the drive. Like he's a man with burning ambition. He was deputy governor of the Bank of Canada from 2003, and then he was governor of the Bank of Canada from 2008 to 2013, which is the period of the financial crisis. And on the back of that, then in a very unusual move, I mean, he truly is this kind of cosmopolitan figure. He was governor of the Bank of England from 2013 to 20. You might say, hang on, isn't he Canadian? Well, white Commonwealth type things are going on here for sure in the Anglo-Canadian relationship. But he actually has, I think he got British citizenship by way of the Bank of England job. But his family is Irish-Canadian, and so he has an Irish passport. So before Brexit, he was an EU citizen. He managed the Bank of England quite successfully as an outspoken critic of Brexit, and then as the manager of the fallout from Brexit in the Bank of England, he walked a very, very fine line, but actually managed to keep the wheels on the bus. So despite the criticism he received from the pro-Brexit people for his stance, I mean, they actually owe him thanks for the way in which I thought he was really kind of fascinating and quite exemplary in the way he basically said, look, I know where I stand on this. And in my position as a central banker and as business, economist, I can't pretend I think Brexit is anything other than a terrible idea. But my job is as a central banker, is not to curtail democracy by using financial markets, but in fact to provide the services of the central bank to stabilize financial markets, whatever incredibly stupid decision you electors may choose to make. And he did that. He carried through on it. He actually, as it were, stabilized financial markets in the wake of the crisis. I thought it was, quite an interesting display of what central banks could do in a cooperative way in relation to democratic processes, even if on the substance one profoundly disagrees. After finishing at the Bank of England, there's been a sense that he's been kind of knocking around looking for the next big job. There were rumors that he might be a candidate for the IMF position, but that traditionally goes to a proper European, and they were looking for a woman to fill the role. So Christine Lagarde did it for a while. So that wasn't an option. And then Kristoleva took over. So his options were blocked in that direction. He was in the private sector, and then he emerged as the head of GFANS, the Glasgow Coalition of Private Finance for Climate Politics, where he really was the kind of figurehead poster boy of blended finance. There were $133 trillion in assets waiting to pile into green causes, was the promise at the Glasgow COP. That has subsequently disintegrated. And Carney and team have had an incredibly hard time holding that together with, the move against ESG in America. And so my sense was it was only a matter of time before he started to position himself for a run at the Canadian premiership. That was probably the job in the end that, that was the most fitting conclusion for the sort of extraordinary career that he's had. He will be tough for the Americans to deal with. This guy is like, he'll make mincemeat out of the second raters in the Trump team. It's just like, it'll be a bloodbath if they ever actually confront each other, because he just doesn't take prisoners. It's made quite clear that, Canada's not going to put up with this BS. He's referred to the, Trump's tariffs as the Voldemort figure of by which he means that one shouldn't even dignify the politics of the United States right now with an explicit mention or discussion. One should just make clear that one opposes it, and Canada will stand up for its sovereignty. This, extraordinary American talk about incorporation of Canada is really beneath contempt. It's a display of really extraordinary disrespect.